Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Armen, and you can find me at ArmensCraftRoom online, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and now Patreon. Thank you for joining me for the Pattern Paper Frenzy class here at Broke Bank Craft Along. We'll go over the directions and how to pick some papers and everything, but first I want to thank Delise for hosting this wonderful event. There's so many really fun classes today, many very interesting topics. I hope you all have a wonderful time and learn new things. So I do have a PDF printout that you can download from Patreon. It's completely free, and my Patreon is at ArmensCraftRoom. It has the directions that we'll be using, which would be the cut patterns, and then at the end it shows the card templates as well. So this class we'll be using 4 sheets of 6x6 pattern paper, like 2 A2 cards, 1 A7 card, and 2 5.5 square cards. And as you can see, each paper is labeled and it says which card it's going to go to. These are to size, so if you print this to size on an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper, you will get a 6x6 that you can lay your paper flat out on here. Things to note, some of this stuff says flip paper over, so double-sided is going to be your best. Some of these say sentiment square, which means we're going to stamp a sentiment directly on it. So when you think about your paper with sentiment, you maybe don't want to have anything super busy like this because it will be hard to read your sentiment. However, you could find a more neutral tone like this would be very easy to read a sentiment stamped on. So things to think of. We do need 4 sheets. This is actually 8x8 paper pad from Stamperia. I thought I would use this one today in my project. You can cut down any size paper to get your 6x6, or you can use a 6x6 pad. I do recommend choosing paper that came together in a kit or pad or some form of packet so that everything mixes and matches, because we're going to mix all these together and get the same one. So if you look through, we've got a couple sentiment squares on paper number 1 and on paper number 4. So we want to have 2 different sheets of paper that have a background that we can easily stamp on. That will be easy to stamp on. That will be easy, and that one. So I think this is the least easy, so we'll pull that out. So these 2 have some colors that would be easy to stamp on. And I need 2 more sheets of paper. You want to make sure that the front and back coordinate. That way when you cut them up and use them, you can flip the papers over however you like to get what you want. And let's see. As it's one paper pad, everything should coordinate, and you'll really want to go with things that look busy or less busy, is how I'd like to define it. And another thing to think about is some of the techniques we're going to be using. It'll be beneficial to have a pattern like this that's repeated. So I think we'll do, there's 3 of my papers. Okay, I think we'll do these 4 for me. And, you know, this is the busy side and this is the not busy side. So I think that will work out. Alright, so again, the 2 pages we want to reserve are the easiest to stamp on. These 2. Did you notice that this would be easy to stamp on as well? So I'm going to set these aside. Now I'm going to cut. Alright, so let's go back to paper number 1. You have a 4x5 1/4 background. I really like this top one here, so I'm going to rotate it so that this side is cut off here, my 3/4 by 4 inch. And that means that if we rotate, we'll have 2 inches down on this side. So I'm going to shorten my paper trimmer here so you guys can see better. Alright, so at the 2 inch strip, I'm going to cut. And then I need 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. So then we'll just keep cutting 2 inches at a time. And don't worry what it looks like yet. We'll worry about it later when we go to mix and match all the card pieces. Okay, and then I need 3/4 of an inch taken off this one. I like this tree, so I want to take it off the side with less tree. So that means we want to have 4 inches to keep. Oops, 5 1/4 I mean. It's already 4 inches wide. So the 5 1/4. There we go. That's pattern paper 1. Okay, so I'm going to separate into piles on the side here. This piece is for card 1. This piece is also card 1. And I have a card 1 here, card 2, and this piece is for card 3. So just set them pile on the side. Now, we have some strips here. I'm going to do a 3/4 by 5 1/2 first, and I'm going to go with the 5 1/2, and I'm just going to put a notch in it and come. Because the paper is 6 inches, if you want to cut it easily, rotate it so your cut edges towards the blade, and 6 inches minus the 3/4 width is 5 1/4. So you should be able to measure this to 5 1/4. And I need to pull my blade down. So if you measure to 5 1/4, and we're gonna go up, should be able to go right through actually, and we'll end up with our strip here, and that little extra piece we are gonna save. We're gonna use that on card 5. I'm gonna make the piles as we go. So this strip is card 4, and this tiny piece is card 5. Don't lose those. So now this is what your card looks like. You have 4 3/4 long by 3/4 inches wide, and then another 3/4 inches. So you could cut these one by one, but I would recommend cutting this square out first. So it's 2 1/4 and 2 1/4. So that's 4 1/2 inches wide. So I'm going to cut 4 1/2 inches wide. And because I've already cut this bottom piece off, it's just straight down. And that's going to be my piece here. And these here, if you look at them, it's 3 by 3 inches and 2 1/4. So I'm going to rotate my paper. And cut 3 inches. Rotate again 3 inches. So this will get my 3 by 3. This goes with card 2. Okay, so this is my top piece here. I'll cut it at 2 1/4. And I've got 2 pieces here, one for card 1 and one for card 3. And then when I cut that 3-inch square, I was left with the 1 1/2 by 3 inch, and that's going into card 4. This piece here, this is going to be cut in half. So 3/4 of an inch, so it's 1 1/2 wide. You could do a smaller trimmer too. Okay, this long inside one is part of card 3. The exterior one gets cut again, 1/2 inch. Now, if you know that this one is 5 1/4 long, and you need to remove 1/2 inch, you could cut this one by the 4 3/4, and that will make it easier for you than trying to measure 1/2 inch. So we'll cut the 4 3/4. This is for card 2. And the teeny tiny piece left, that one's going to go to card 5. Okay, paper 2 and 1 and 2 are done. Alright, so now we're on paper 3. We need 2 3 by 3 squares. so. That's dividing the paper in half when you cut it in three. So just pick whichever and then rotate it and cut it 3 inches again. Okay. One of these goes to card 3. The other one goes to card 1. Now with this piece here, you have a straight cut through. It's already 3 inches tall, so you'll cut it 1 3/4 inch. And that piece is going to go to card 5. Okay. This is what we've got left. The next straight cut through, if you look at it, is 2 inches in. So we're going to cut 2 inches off. Now on this 2-inch wide piece, you got a 2x2 and a 2x1. So I'm going to rotate this and cut it to 2x2. And that will give me the 2 inches and the 1 inch. So the 2x1 goes to card 4. The 2x2 is going to go to card 2. And then that leaves this segment here. The easiest way to cut this is to cut the 2 1/4. It's already 2 1/4 wide, so we're going to rotate and cut by 2 1/4. And that will leave you with each piece. The slender piece will go for card 5, and the square will go for card 2. Alright, so we just have one more page to cut. This is our page 4. Now this one, I wanted to try to get this one to be the 4x6. It's already 6 inches long. So because I want to have this as my panel, I'm going to rotate it upside down and measure it 4 inches from the edge of the piece I want and slice that. And here's my 4x6. This is card 2. Okay, now I have this panel here, just 2-inch squares. So we're just going to cut at the 2-inch mark until the whole piece is gone. So you should cut twice to get 3 2x2 squares. Okay, one of them will go to card 4. One of them will go to card 1. And one of them will go to card 3. Now, we've got all of the card pieces done. So what you can do is lay them out. This is a 4x5, so this is my background, or I have this choice. I'm probably going to use this side. Then the 3x3, that's going to go in the middle. I'm going to use the words on that one. You have 2 2x2s, one that's going to have the sentiment, and one that's going to be something to look at. So looking at these, I know initially I thought that could be the sentiment, and that's pretty cool, but this might be even easier to read. So what it boils down to is you're going to take this 2 1/4, figure out which side you're going to use for your mat. And the reason you want to figure this out is because it's going to depend on what your focal point is. I think I'm going to use this side with the moon and this plain side. So when you put them here, it really blends in. So if I were to use the wood, it would really blend in. So if I flip it over, it still really blends in. So now we're going to swap. I'm going to go, okay, this darker piece is originally planned, will help stand it out. And then maybe I want to flip to show the blue side. Maybe I want the writing on the front, although it does compete with this writing. That writing is, there we go. Now that's, sorry, I read Japanese. That's the correct direction here on this. So, there we go. So now you could have the wood and put something on here like an embellishment. You can have more writing. I think more writing is a little excessive, so I'll do a wood grain. That's what my card's probably going to look like. And then this is the inside. Now we're going to finish the cards at the end, but I want you to go through and think about, as we go through each one, think about what they're going to look like here. Now there are some options for card bases, which is next up. You can do a solid color or like a black or a white if you want to go neutral. Because these are so neutral, I'm going to choose colors that are inside my pattern papers and try to match them for my card bases. Okay, so for card bases, I chose a few colors that coordinate with some of the non-neutral colors in my paper. We need 2 A2 card fronts. So you're going to take the 8.5 by 11 cardstock on the 8.5 inch side, slide into your trimmer, line it up at 4 1/4, and slice it in half the long way. This will give you 2 top fold card bases. For the A7 card, in my instance that's a blue paper, that's a 5 by 7. So to get that, you need a 10-inch card. So take the 11-inch side, line it up at the top, cut at the 10-inch mark, so you're just cutting an inch off. Rotate. Now that 10 inches when folded in half gives you 5, so when you rotate you're going to cut at the 7-inch mark. Cutting an 1.5 inches off because that was the 8.5 inch side. And we're just going to set these aside. Okay. And then the last 2 are square cards. You can make them at 5.5 if you like. I did that because that takes the whole sheet of paper. So on the short 8.5 side, slide that in, cut it at 5.5. So you're cutting off 3-inch by 11-inch strip. And you're going to leave it at 11 because 5.5 times 2 is 11. We're going to do that a second time. Cutting the short side at 5.5. Okay, so I trim on my Cricut trimmer, and it's a little handheld for the scoring. So this is nice. They have, you can buy score or cut blades for this, but the thing is they only have one handle. I can't find handles, so you can either have it always cut or always score, or keep pulling them on and off, which I think is a little annoying, but I think just using it for scoring works for me because I have a big trimmer. So I'll open it up, that way you can see everything, and then we're going to go score. Now if you have the cut blade in here, they sell this tool. Well, it usually comes with the Cricut, it's the scoring one, and you can run that right through here to score. Alright, so this is 11 inches. You're going to have 5.5, which is the halfway point. Hold it up against the top, run your scoring over it. Where you cut makes an indented line. That's the outside of the card. The inside where you get this bubble, that's going to be the inside, and you're going to fold and press and hold. And you'll do that one more time for your other 11-inch by 4 1/4. You're going to score a 5.5 and then fold it in. For the 5 by 7 card, you're going to rotate it so that your 10-inch side is on the top of the trimmer. Slide that to the 5-inch mark and score at 5 inches. Once again, leaving the bubble on the inside of the card. Fold. Now we're on to squares. These are 5.5 inches by 11. So take the 11-inch side against the top of the trimmer. Slide that through to 5.5. Score at 5.5, which is the halfway point. Fold back, and now you have 5.5 inch square, and we'll do that one more time. If you're choosing to use colored cardstock bases like I am, it can be a really nice finishing touch to have a white or cream interior. So I have mine pre-cut. This is not part of the instructions in the class, so if you're using white you wouldn't need it. For instance, this is a 4.5 inch square that I'll set in the middle, and it'll have a nice frame. So I'm just going to place my insides in. We'll glue them in later. And I have a 4 by 6 for the 5 by 7 card. The reason being the front of this card is 4 by 6. So if you have a card like that, whatever you measure the front panel, it looks really good if the inside panel is the same proportion. And then if you have an A2 card, it's 4 by 5 1/4. That gives you that nice slender border. Alright, so we'll give everybody a chance to accumulate their supplies here. And let's get our desk organized so we don't have any accidents. So card 1 is an A2, so select one of your A2 card bases, pick up the stack of paper for card 1, place it on the inside. Card 2 is the 5x7, so get your 5x7 card, pull out your stack of cut up papers and put it on the inside. We're going to go do this for all of them. That way we can pull them kind of like a bundle, one at a time. Card 3 is a square. And if you get confused and you think that your pile got messed up, the easiest way to check it is to look at the card front and say, okay, there was a small one on here. There was another 2x2 here. Then there was a 3x3. So we have a 3x3, 2x2 in the layers. Okay. Now card 4 is another A2. Card 4 has this long strip. It's got a 2x2, a 2x1. What is this? 1.5x3. And the final card, card 5, is a square. And this one has the least amount of paper, so it has this small strip here. There's an interior and exterior flag, and then one here. Before we start cards 1 and 2, we're gonna get our stenciling done. That way it has a chance to dry while we make all the other cards. So go ahead and pull out cards 3, 4, and 5, and you'll need to decide which pieces you'd like to stencil. So I'm going to pull out my 3-inch square for card 3. I do have some extra plain cardstock in here that I cut to mat some of these, which is an option that you can do. And you just want to keep in mind in your head what you're pulling out. Now card 5 has very small pieces, so I wouldn't recommend doing anything with card 5. Card 4 has a couple larger pieces, and I'm going to pick the oblong one. Now we're going to set the card bases aside. I want to do my last card base with the stencil as well, because there's just very small pattern papers for the front, and I think it might be neat to stencil the inside and outside of the card. So if you'd like to do that, now would be the time, but it's optional. These aren't the pattern paper, but we'll do pattern paper and the base here if you'd like. So you're going to lay everything out with how you'd like to stencil it. I do recommend having some stencils that are a little bit more repetitive in pattern and potentially a little bit smaller if you have something that does splatters. Like for example, I really like this stencil, but it doesn't really work for this project because the flappers are really large. So it would work great for the background of the card, but if you were to place it on top of your squares, you would end up covering most of the pattern and not being able to see the paper so much. So if you're trying to cover up the paper because you don't like it, this would be a great choice. But keep scale in mind. So if you have a smaller sheet of paper, you're going to want a smaller scale stencil, and for a larger sheet of paper, a larger scale stencil will work. So what I have that I'm going to use is this BB Cameron Hummingbird Texture Stencil from Spellbinders. It has some really neat textures to it. Very painted looking, splotchy. I'm going to use these two textures. And for my card, I brought in the Hero Wax Black because there is some black in my paper. It's very little, but there's so many colors in this paper that I feel like black is going to be the way to go. So choose wisely and pick whatever type you would like. I'm just using a palette brush on mine. this is how I normally would apply stuff, but you could do a scraper tool or whatever. Now, you want to pick a surface easy to clean, glass mat. This one's silicone. Now there's black here, so I'm going to do over on the flowers, and I think on this one I'm going to do some splotches. So just press through, keep it clean, and you might want to do 2 to 3 locations on your paper and pull it up. Now this is going to be set aside. This one, I think I'm going to do the texture on larger splotches because it's a larger section, and we do cover some of it. We're going to cover some of it with the other paper, so I'm also trying to do sections that I don't think will be covered up. Now these being square, of course, we can rotate them however we want later, unless you have a pattern paper that has specific directions. Okay, so I'm going to pull this one aside. I'm going to quickly wipe down my mat because I don't want to get the card ruined. Now, for the card front here on the final one, it's going to have like a belt and then a piece here. So I'm going to do up in this corner and maybe down in here. Now, a white would look good on this too, but white might be a bit stark compared to the paper that I've chosen. And I'm thinking I really like this Hero Wax. They have it in a lot of colors. It's kind of a cool pearlescent finish when it's done. It's really easy to use. It's pretty thick. I think the thicker pastes, if you're a beginner, are a bit better. They don't require Craft-A-Lunch. They don't require any type of pixie spray or anything. You can just go. You can of course put this on a sticky mat to hold your stencil or tape it down. I generally don't like to do that if I can avoid it, just because it's one extra step. Oh, there we go. That one turned out as expected. And rule of threes, so 3 or 5 is going to be your friend, odd numbers. You have to be careful when you remove it because there is a chance of smudging when it's still wet. Alright, so now I'm doing 4 because I'm going to end up covering this section with paper. So set that aside, and then on the inside, I thought it might be fun. You don't normally see texture paste on the inside of a card, so why not? And I guess I just really like this section of the stencil the best. Alright. Once you've stenciled to your heart's content and you like the way your project looks, find a safe place to set all of these, and go set your stencil and your palette knife or your scraper in warm soapy water, and that'll keep it from hardening on. It'll just make it easier to clean after class. So we'll pause the video here and give everybody a couple seconds to go put everything in water and set some things aside safely, and don't forget to cap your paste or wax or whatever you're using tightly so that it doesn't dry out. Don't forget to spray down your work surface and wipe it up really well, making sure that you have all your paste or other mixed media format removed. You don't want to get it on any of your other projects today. Okay, let's talk about embossing folders. Okay, so things to look out for when you pick an embossing folder. A really detailed pattern like this that doesn't have a lot of white space in it is going to hide most of your pattern paper. In this sample, it works out really well because the floral pattern in the background looks like ink splotches, But if you were going for something more defined or wanted to see the flowers, you can't. So that's just a buyer's beware on that style. Now, if you had something a little bit more detailed like this, where there are some blank spaces, but there's a lot going on this one, you can kind of see the polka dot paper through, but the embossing folder really is the star of the show. So you need to decide what's the star of your show, the folder or your paper. And for this swirly pattern one, you can see here the indents that it left were too small to see the pattern on the paper. It still works, it looks purple, it's pretty, but it doesn't look patterned. So these are the reasons I would not recommend this type of folder for this project. I do, however, recommend something with small medium sized geometric shapes that are consistent pattern throughout. And when I say small, I mean, you know, big enough that you could actually see what's on the inside, not as small as the other swirls. And an example here of how this one worked out, you can see inside the circles, you can see the pattern on the paper, that there were some leaves in there. And that was my goal. I wanted to still see the pattern paper. So you want to make sure that whatever you have that's consistent and rolling about across the entire surface is going to allow you to see through it just enough. Another great option is a folder that has a little bit more white space to it, and some maybe larger openings, circles, paint splatters. This one's from Spellbinders. It's like a paint splatter one. And this one works extremely well because you can even see a plaid through here. The plaid is the color pattern paper that's under that ink, and you can clearly see the pattern because these swatches are large enough. Here's another one. So for this reason, I think this is an exceptional folder for a project like this. So when you're looking at your folders, trying to find one for the class today, that's the type of stuff you want to look for. Now, my other concern here is we've got a couple cards here that we have full panels that we're going to use for the first two techniques. The first card's an A2, 4 1/4, 5 1/2. The second card's a 5 by 7, having you cut out a 4 by 6. So what you need to do is determine how large your embossing folder is in comparison to your card. So we're not going to use the embossing folder on card 1. However, if you are using an A2 embossing folder like this one, and you have a 4 by 6 sheet of paper, it may or may not fully fit. Now, in this particular case, this is a Stampin' Up! One. They have carried the pattern through just enough. You can see there'll be a little line here at the very bottom, which you could trim off if you chose to, that will not be patterned with the embossing folder. And if you've got the larger one, which is basically the size of a half sheet of paper, you could do 2 card fronts. This one could very easily fit a 4 by 6, and you could move it around and pick out whatever design you want to show through. So take a second, look at your embossing folder and the sheets of paper, and the things you want to consider when you make this decision are how big is your folder compared to your paper, and also does the design of your paper work better with one folder or the other? So which paper is going to look the best inside your folder? Another third thing to consider is if you are like me and you accidentally miscut, you will not be able to use this for the first project, even though it's paper number 1. This one will have to go through the embossing folder because it will be ruined in my first project. So if you have an accidental tear or cut, it automatically needs to go into be card 2 that you use the embossing folder. So between those, choose whether or not you're going to start with card 1 or card 2. Set the other card aside so it'll be out of the way. And then we'll get a move on. So because my card 1 front has a cut in it, it can't go through the card 1 process. So I'm going to use card 2, which is the 5 by 7 for my card 1. And I'll use the card 1 with the embossing folder. Alright, so for card 1, we don't need any special equipment. Choose which side you want to be the front of your card. I happen to really like this side. So we're gonna fold this card, and you want the top of the dent on the front. So the front of the card needs to face the table, and then you'll fold it in half, increase the fold, so you're gonna end up with a mountain fold, showing you the front side like this. Okay, you'll unfold it, and then you'll make the same type of fold. You'll go from one edge towards the center, right up to your fold line, and you'll crease, unfold, rotate, and then you'll do the same for the other side, right up to the center. So basically, we've just folded it. We made 4 lines. You know, if you're doing something 3-dimensional, you could make a column with it by the time you're done. We're not going to, but you could. Now lay it back flat on the mat, front side down, and then we'll flip the long side right in half, and make sure you crease your paper, unfold it, and then the long side will go towards the center fold, and then we'll rotate, long side will go towards the center fold again. Okay, so you should end up with a paper that's really folded. You should have all the creases facing the same direction. Now you'll need one of these sponge daubers. It could be a big one or a small one, like a finger held one, whatever you have, it will work. You just need to have a sponge and not a brush. A brush will not work for this technique. And you'll need to find a color that works with your paper. And I do recommend having some blank paper available to put underneath it, just to kind of test your color. Now I've got a little bit of pink red on here, which is not too bad. I am going to actually use Cherry Cobbler Stampin' Up. That's the color of my card front. On my other cards, it matches fairly well for this floral. This card is going to be on Misty Moonlight, but there's really no blue in the front of this one. So while it will stand out with the blue's in the other piece. So we're just going to fold your card in half again. Get some ink on the dauber, tap it off. Make sure you have good coverage. And if you want a lot of coverage, hold it on the paper and rub it into the edge. If you want minimal coverage, hold it up in the air and just tap it right along the fold line. And right on the outside as well. And when you run out, just go grab some more ink. I'm going to do all the outer edges. This will really help it stand out. Okay, and then we'll continue to fold on each fold line. And you'll do the same. Now, if you wanted to do this and you wanted to run it against your paper and get more of your ink on here, then it's going to end up significantly more inked up. Like this was a white sheet of pattern paper behind here. If you lay it across and blend it in while it's laying flat, you're going to end up with this much coverage. So it just depends on how much of your paper you want to cover up. And we'll continue going on until all the creases have been inked up with your sponge dauber. Okay, and when you're done with one side, flip to the other. And you can do as little or as much as you like. And this really highlights the crease. This is a very similar look to what we're going to do next with an embossing folder. So if you don't have an embossing folder or die cutter, you don't want one, this is a way to get something a little bit similar. Alright, and I'm just looking around the edges and saying, okay, you know, I want it to be somewhat even. And I'm opening it up to get just the side I want to have a little extra. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with mine. So I'm going to close up my ink and set that aside. And I do recommend dabbing off on your scrap paper a little bit. That way if this rolls on your surface or you touch it, you're not going to get as much ink on yourself. You can also save this scrap paper and die cut out of it, or use it as a background at some other point, because you've essentially just dyed it. And if you got any ink on your desk like I did, definitely take care of that. Okay, so here is the tricky part. We're going to set that one aside and grab all of your directions. Now, we've got card 1 and card 2. So if you use the card 1 panel, you're going to follow this layout here. And this is a real 2 size. If you print the PDF without scale, you'll end up being able to lay your paper directly on it. And if you flip it over, you'll see card 2. It's a little bit different. They're not quite lined up the same. So I'm going to show card 2 first, and then we'll do card 1 next, because that's how my paper works out. So if you are doing card 1 with the card 1 fold, then you know, it's your option. You can hang out and wait for the demo, which I'll present next, or you can follow the assembly. We're just gluing it together. So the special part was what we did to the paper, not how it's really laid out. These were just some ideas to get you to do. So I am using card 2 template with the 5x7 card. And I did cut some solid matte pieces out. They're 1/4 inch larger than my pattern paper as an optional, just, you know, an option. Now, because I'm using a colorful card base, I went ahead and I cut out a 4x6 sheet of white card to put on the inside. I think that if you make the white card for the interior the same size as your largest panel on the front, it has some continuity to it from the front and the back. Gives it a bit more professional look. I find if one is way smaller than the other or way larger, it seems a little bit jarring. I mean, it's not that it can't work, it's just I prefer to have them look pretty similar. Okay, so once the inside's done up, as you can see, I could lay this on here and cover the whole card. So let's make sure we're all in the screen here. Alright, so I'm going to adhere the back of my card that I just inked up. I recommend a liquid glue with all these folds. You want a real strong hold. Get some glue you trust. Foam tape would also work really well here. This depends on how much dimension you want and what kind of supplies you've already got. This is supposed to be a good beginner card. So we're going to lay that flat. This red grid is going to help draw the rest of it in. Now I had some extra pieces. This round one and this sentiment, they were just cut aparts from my paper pad. If you have some type of cut apart or punch apart, you might want to use them as well. So I just want to take a minute to show you what it could look like if you were to put nothing down. Then it would look like this, and you can check your measurements here. So basically it really wouldn't have any distinction because this paper is very busy. If you have very different color papers or it's not as busy, you'll be able to see this just fine the way it is. And if you have a pattern that you don't want to cover up so much, you can also adjust these. So I'm going to scale mine down a little to leave some room, or maybe up. A lot of these flowers are unfortunately covered, so you can play around with this. And I've scaled everything that's kind of layering on top. And then if we flip that over, and then there's a choice here, you know, sentiment, you could stamp it here, that's where it's meant to go. You could also put some type of sentiment from your paper pad on, if that's something that came with it. You might have some ephemera that you want to put here instead of this square. make the card your own. Pick whatever's going to make you happy. The extra long strip here is for the interior of the card, and it's meant to go either across or down, whatever you prefer. And let's glue this one together. Now, I need a lot of birthday cards personally, so I've gone ahead and I've stamped happy birthday in the colors of all my cards so that I can glue them down. And I am going to use the mats on this specific card because I think it helps the paper be distinguished. And I'm going to probably put a red happy birthday to tie in with the red ink that I've just put down on my pattern paper. We made that grid. I have some very small happy birthdays that fit for this design. Now, if I just put it down the way I've cut it, it'll cover the whole pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this very slender. And I'm going to leave room for flags so it looks a little bit more intentional because it's so small. And flags didn't work out, so we'll do a half and half flag here. And I'm going to glue that down. So now I've got this birthday card. Now I could change this up a bit, and you want to see, you know, if you put these together, they're the same color, right? They're not gonna distinguish. So make sure you can see your papers between each other. This is a great alternative if you have a lot of scrap paper. You don't need to follow the cut pattern as far as having 4 sheets of 6x6. You could look at the measurements of the sheets that we're using and then choose different pieces of paper based on the scrap size and cut them accordingly. It's a good way to get rid of a lot of scraps. I'm actually going to line mine up off center because I really don't want to cover up this flower. And it's your card, you can choose to do that. I did have you set aside card-based cardstock earlier, and it's for situations like this where they're not level. So we're going to go ahead and add some extra heavy-duty card right where this falls off the edge. That way it lays flat. And we'll test it. I encourage everybody to have a lot of freedom with their projects this weekend, with all the classes. Remember, these are your cards. Make them usable for you. Enjoy the way that they are looking in the end, and design them for yourself and the people you're gifting them for. Don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about following the directions. I mean, I built this class and I'm very loosely following the directions. So it's always okay to creatively change things up based on the paper that you're using and the supplies that you have on hand. Now I'm just cutting some strips here to put underneath. Just kind of waving my piece around to see where I can put the glue where it won't show. And then we'll fill in the gaps here with this card-based card because it's nice and thick. And it'll help us keep everything level. Alright, so I did modify mine a little bit, which is going to leave me a bit off the edge here. And now that glue's kind of dry, I can go in with my scissors and take that piece off. Being careful not to cut the actual card. And I see I need a little glue on the inside there, so we'll glue that back down. Okay, Now on the interior, I now have this extra piece that I can place down, which I think I'll do. And we've got this piece as well. Not loving that one as much. I'm actually going to use this random cutoff. But if you have this strip, you can place it in here. And it's just long enough that you can center it going vertically, or you can take it across the top or the bottom. And to line it up, you would either glue it on before you place this, or you could glue it down and then trim it off. And remember, 2 sides to your paper gives you a couple options. I also had some cut aparts that I don't know really what to do with, because the paper there's just so many cut aparts in this paper. So I'll probably put this on the front with some foam. But here's the card too, as we have it. As you can see, I just shifted this piece over slightly so that I could see more of my flower. Because that was my favorite part of the paper. You can still see all the work we've done. A little paper on the inside. And I did say if you had any kind of ephemeras or anything, to go ahead and bring those with you, as far as anything you want to put on the front of the card. So we're going to take some more card base, and we're going to cut some strips here. And I'm going to do probably 3 layers. And basically this is going to be a foam glue substitute. You can also use these layers to create sentiments, or even die cut things like circles or squares to stamp images in later. It just depends on how thick your leftovers are. This one's pretty thick, so it's not too bad. Alright, so now that I have my own little ephemera with some solid foam, we're going to go ahead, I'm going to put it right at the crosshairs. And then I had this other sentiment from the inside of the paper that says, "Come butterfly, it's late, we've miles to go together," and there's a butterfly. So I'm going to put this on the inside of the card. Really just because I hate to throw out the paper. It's really nice that these Stamperia pads come with so many pieces to them. I believe this one was called Oriental Garden. It's quite old. It was old when I bought it, like an old design, and I've had it for a while. So I do want to line that up here. And I'm just pushing on the top, not the bottom, so that I can remove it and cut off the extra. And again, that's just to make sure it sits level on the inside. Alright. First card of the day is complete. I ended up not using my strip of paper, so I'm just going to add that back to the cardstock pattern paper pouch with the rest of the scraps. So here's my card. Now that's, very full looking 5x7 card for the size pieces that we had, and I did have some ephemera. So you can always, if you don't have pre-made ephemera, you can always stamp something and color it, or make a die cut and glue it onto the square even. Alright, so let's move on to the second technique. I'll be making the second technique with my card 1 set. You can use it with card 1 or card 2, whatever you have left that you have not yet used. And we'll just flip our directions over. And for the second technique, you're going to need your embossing folder. Alright, so I've got my card 1 packet out, and I had a slit in my cardstock. So first things first, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to scotch tape it together. Totally fine to do that. We're only going to use the one side, and I want this to stick together in the embossing folder and not tear. When you see the cut, you realize why it wasn't going to work out for the one without the folder. And we'll get our die cutting machine and our folder out. Okay, so I'm using a Stampin' or a Spellbinders Platinum 6. You can use whatever you've got going on for your die cutting machine. Just know your sandwich for your die cutter. So for mine, it comes with these nice plates with directions. My folder that I want to use is that splatter folder, and it's a 2D folder, so it's going to need the base, this platform, the embossing folder with the paper, and a cut plate, which is the clear one. Now, a 3D folder works even better for this process, and for that you would need the platform base, the folder, and you would need your 3D adapter plate. So I didn't have a 3D folder with a design that would work for this technique with my specific paper, but I had a 2D folder that I loved and works really well. Particularly, this is just fun for birthdays. This actually came from a birthday collection, if I remember correctly. So open up your folder, and we got to figure out where the indent is going to be. You want the top of your paper to be debossed, which means that the embossing goes down and does not stick up. So basically, if you're on a Spellbinders folder and you have the logo, I can stick my hand in here and feel that this bubble is, my finger goes inside of it, which means that whatever faces this direction, this bubble will be popped up because the back is above the plastic. So that means it's going to push the paper up. So if the paper is being pushed up this way and I want it debossed, I'm going to take the front of my paper and flip it over. And we'll close it. So if it's the whole folder, you're done. If it's not and you get to pick where you're going, flip it upside down so that you can see where your bubbles are. And in my case, I could even flip it left and right, which I think I'm going to do here because I like the larger bubbles being around here. So get your folder all set up, place it in your die cutter, and we'll roll it through. One pass should be enough. If you do two or back and forth, you risk it shifting inside the plate, and then you can end up with a weird emboss. Alright, so that's it. That's all we need this die cutter for. So this can get put away. We're done with it for the day, or at least for this class. And yeah, let me just move these out of the way. Okay, so we've got our folder. I'm gonna remove it. I love this paper with these cherry blossoms, and I've got a lot of the big holes right around some of the font and stuff too, so you can see the other side, it's all raised up. For this technique, we're going to do the bottom, and we're going to pull out our, well, this scrap paper. Let's pull out big scrap paper, or go on and make a mess on your table if you have something that wipes clean. So there's a couple options here. You can choose a color that's already in your folder. We're going to swipe it over, so the only thing you're going to see are these lower dots. So like this dot is on a red flower, so if I pick red, you're not going to be able to see it. If I pick a dark brown, it's not going to have a lot of contrast with any of these other colors, except maybe this blue. So in my instance, I'm actually going to go for black. And you're going to want to have an ink refill when you do this technique, or a new ink pad, and then potentially buy an ink refill. I've recently refilled mine for this, specifically for this class. So we're going to go straight ink pad to paper. If you're nervous, if you've never done this before and you're worried about wrecking it, find the ugliest piece of pattern paper you have and grab your ink pad and practice with that after you emboss it. This particular paper has a coating on it, that's why it's kind of shiny. If you don't have a coating, you can go straight ink to paper. If you have a coating, I recommend taking one of these nail files and take the shape 1, which is the emery board style, and just kind of rub it over. And you can see we're getting more and more white as I pull the color off the paper. Now, why would you do that? The more coating you get off, which we didn't get all of it off, obviously, or it would have been completely white, and that's a little excessive, I think, for this, but everywhere where it's white, it's going to now be darker, and it'll give you extra tone on tone with your ink pad. And we'll just wipe the dust off, mainly because I don't want the dust on my ink pad. There's nothing wrong with it on the paper. Alright, so once you're ready, we're going to take our ink pad and we're going to go very flat. If you have a 2D folder, really flat. Don't push too hard in anywhere. And we're just going to swipe. And we're going to rotate, wax on, wax off. We're going to go forward and back. And you're going to continue doing this until you get the shade that you want. So if that's solid black, you can put as much ink down as you want. I like the distressed look with this particular paper pad that I'm using, so I'm just gonna go for mostly covered. Now, if you can see here where I have the words, I got a little smudgies of the ink here and in here on these circles. That's because I have a 2D folder and there's not a lot of height difference. If you had a 3D folder, it would be a lot easier to have clean interior, but we're using what we have. And part of using what we have is not wasting. So I used it on silicone and I sprayed it to get bubbles. I'm going to take my paper from the first card with the ink blends and I'm just going to smush this onto the paper to pick up some of this ink and help give this a different look. And this is just a trick I do, and then you just let this dry. And mainly that's just going to give you background for another day, for another project, or some die cutting material. Helps reduce waste on your ink pads when you do stuff like this that take a lot of ink. Alright, I'm also going to wipe off my fingers. Check your hands. You could use gloves when you do this. That's a way to keep clean. Then you can just take the gloves off. I didn't think to do that. Alright, so now want to go a little bit extra on this. Be tender with it until it dries. Depending on your ink, this is a dye ink, so it dries pretty quickly. If you have like a hybrid or an oxide ink, it'll take a little longer. I am going to fill in the dots here with some of this scrapbook.com clear shimmer marker brush. It's like a Wink of Stella, but their brand, and it comes in all sorts of colors. I like the clear because it goes with everything. And I'm just dropping clear inside the larger holes here. Just because I like shine. Shine doesn't necessarily fit the pattern paper that I'm using, but I happen to like sparkle on everything, so I have a lot of real small dots. I'm not going to worry about them, just the ones that the brush fits in, and we'll just wipe that off a little. And you can see some shimmer there on the inside of the splatters. This makes it a little extra special. And now we're going to pull everything aside. I'm going to start assembling the rest of the pieces of this card while the background here starts to dry. And for this one, I did bring in some more background pieces and some interior. And I got another die cut and a sentiment. For this one, I'm going to suggest that the strip for the interior be put on first before adhering any colored, any white to the colored cardstock. This allows you to trim off excess if you have it. This one looks like it'll be a good fit. Oh, just a hair extra, so just a little bit. So we'll flip the card over and just trim this off. It's much easier that way. I should have suggested that on the last card, but I didn't think about it until the end. Yeah, if you need to clean up an edge from your paper trimmer, go ahead and do that too before gluing that in. And if you have a white card, I do suggest that you let the interior float up a little bit above the very base. And that way when your card closes, if they don't line up perfectly, you don't have a weird pattern paper showing on the front of your card. It'll be still white on the bottom. Alright, so don't really need to glue the base down here if you were going to keep it this way, but as we're using the mat, it'll kind of pull it all together. So we'll have to decide what sides do we want. Now obviously this side looks good with the red. And we've got this one here. And then we've got another to pull it in, and this one has some red as well. So for now, we'll just do this. And I've got an option here to have some writing, or I could perhaps put this circle on. There's also an option to keep this clear and open. And on this one, I've got Earth, Laughs, and Flowers as the sentiment, and it would fit nicely right in here. And if I were to put the circle flower on, that would make more sense. It would also make sense to put it here. So I'm going to start gluing this together. I think that I prefer the writing on the back of this one. And then I actually put the plants here for a little distinguishment. And then we could even put the sentiment there if we wanted. There's a lot of different ways to customize this template. It's one of the reasons I really like it. It's very customizable. It's very modular, and none of the pieces are really that big. So because they're square, you can flip them and rotate them whatever direction you want. Like, this is a directional pattern. This is right side up, right? So if you read Japanese, you know that. If you don't, you might not, and you might rotate it whatever direction. And that's fine too, whatever way you like to look at it. But that's the beauty of squares. You not only get both sides, but you don't have to worry about directionality as much, which, I know we've all probably cut directional paper and ended up going, and having it not work out. So this saves that. Alright, hopefully this is pretty dry. Oh, I'm still getting a little ink on my fingers here. So, alright. I'm going to assume everybody else's project is also still wet, so let's tuck everything aside, and we'll let that card front dry. And we'll move on to card number 3. And card number 3 is our square. And it's the square with all the squares in it. So there's 2 square cards. The one with the long skinny piece is the wrong one. So this is the one that has all the same squares that you've been looking at. And this one, we're just going to straight up assemble it. Just as is, it's the same proportion, basically the same everything. And because it's square, it's very, very centered, at least in this card pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and dump everything out. I've got the interior, and I have this interior strip. So you can have the interior strip go whatever direction you like. I think it just depends on what you'd like to look at. I am going to trim this up because it looks like my blade didn't quite get the gunk off of it from the paper pad. It's like the little glue strips. I like this side best. So I'm going to use this side. And I like the bottom the best, so I'm going to start from the bottom and glue. And I'm just going to place it on the right side. You can place this however you want. It's a square. Honestly, it's your card. You can place it down the middle if that's what makes you happy. I'm going to flip this over and cut the tab off. Alright. Now, glue the inside in. I think it's always easier to decorate the inside first. tends to be an afterthought. It's easier to remember to decorate if you have to put the white sheet of paper in. I think it's hard to remember to decorate a white card on the interior. Alright, there we go. Now on the front, we're going to take our 3x3 paper. Now I have some extra pieces here because I went ahead and I've got, you know, an ephemera piece from the pack and a sentiment from the pack. Okay, it took me a minute, but I forgot. I put stenciling on my 3x3 for this one, and it's dry enough. I mean, I wouldn't call this like send it in the mail dry, but it's definitely dry enough to build with. So if you look at the pattern here, if you're just using the paper, it's 3x3 with a 2x2 for the sentiment, and then you've got 2 1/4 and then a 2-inch. Okay, and that's the card. And then you'd stamp a sentiment here. So you might have a happy birthday. Now, I went ahead and I cut out extra layers for my cards because I like the way it looks. Now, this back one, if you cut out an extra sheet of paper, it could be solid or printed, it could be embossed, whatever, just add a little extra. This one's a 4-inch square. So there is a possibility to add one here and then add your 3-inch square, and then you can continue building. And have something like this. Now, these are all the options. Obviously, the more papers that you put underneath this, the less of this 3x3 square you're going to see. And also the heavier the card gets. So I just wanted people to see the options available. So for my 3x3, I believe this is correct side for the flowers. Actually, this might be up. Yeah, this is up. Okay, so my 2x2s, I'm looking here, I've got a couple different patterns. Oh, I like that one a lot for the centerpiece. So I think what we'll do is put this one here like this, and then this other one will have very plain. Although when it's plain, you can't tell with the writing. I might have, yeah, I probably should have stenciled on the other side of this one, but that's okay. And this is why we cut some extra out, because it doesn't really have a distinction. And so this way we can distinguish it from our sentiment here. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing these layers down. And I like to glue mine centered. 100% up to you how you want to do yours. Even if you have leftover ink from card 1 on your brush, you can go ahead and ink the edges up. That will also give you some distinction around your papers. I didn't add any ink, I just went with what was already on here, so it's probably more pink than anything. So I'm going to leave most of my extra solid cardstock off this card. But again, you can choose to add what you like. And you can foam tape anything that you feel needs extra. Okay. Now, this is a bit flat, so I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and lay it where I'd like it, because I need a thin strip here to make up for one sheet of card, which would be the 3x3. And then underneath here, you've got, you're going to need 2 strips, basically. And the reasoning is because you've got the red one, and now you've got the pattern paper. So you'll need extra compared to the first side. And we're just trying to level, or less. I mean, you need a second one here because this one's short, the paper. So you've got, essentially, to level it out, on the side hanging off, you're going to have, for this 3x3 and for this 2x2, you have a layer. And then for this one in the center here, just the 2x2. And then this side on the far right will lay flush. It should all lay flush. And test it out. Mine does. Make sure yours does too. And once you're happy with it, you're done gluing on extra pieces. Now I do want a happy birthday on here because the sentiment that I found that goes with this picture, it's too big. It looks kind of funny and I don't like how it looks on the side. So we're just going to go straight up paper, and I'm going to trim this happy birthday down quite a bit more, like I did the last one, and we'll just give it some ends that are angled. This looks a little bit more polished, and I can't cut a straight line, so by angling it, I guarantee it'll look better because the angle is intentional, so they're kind of going to be a little bit closer than even rather than one that's not quite up and down. Alright, so when you go to glue this down, glue all the pieces of card on the back of that too. We'll line it back up, we'll drop it down. Alright, and then we can just set our extra pieces of card aside. And I'm not super into the ephemera, so we're going to leave that one be. Yeah, it's really not it's really not wanting to glue down. So always feel free to add extra glue. And for this one, I'm actually going to put a block down just to weight it down a little bit. And that's your card number 3. We're going to go ahead and finish up with card 4, and then we'll come back to the ink blended card 2, just to make sure everybody's project is dry. I don't want you getting ink on your fingers and smearing it all over your other projects. It'll be really depressing. Alright, so here we go. Card number 3. And with a little bit of an interior decoration. And we're going to set this one aside. And we'll bring out for card number 4. This is for scraps. Just like card 4 and 5 are all for scraps. So card 4 is our scrap A2 size card. So we'll pull that one out. Now remember, you might have stenciled on it. So go grab all your stenciled papers. So for me, I stenciled on this 1.5 by 3 inch paper here. And we're going to take everything out that's on the inside. And I have cut some solid papers just in case. So, and I also had a sentiment. So basically, I like to line up what we're looking at here and see which sides I prefer. Obviously the stenciled one is going to be my choice on that. And then this back one here, so it'd either be words or I think I'm going to go yeah, I'm going to go with it like this. Now, you could 100% cut another layer and layer them all up. And if you feel like you can see them better, then that's a great way to do it. I'm going to glue in the interior first. I don't really have a piece cut for the inside because, you know, we ran out of the pattern paper strips and we used it on the front to give it a little bit more pizzazz. So it's really plain on the interior of this card. But if you had the ephemera, then it might be a good option. There is a a flower on the front of this card that you can see. So I think I'm going to put an extra flower in here. I like the side with the butterfly better. So I'm just going to cut a straight line, save the other half of this ephemera because it's just a huge circle. It's like 2.5 inches, so too big for the inside. But then we can glue it, cut the semicircle in half first, and then you can line it flush with the inside of your card. This goes with any shape that is not a square 90-degree angle. You can do this for where you cut, sorry about that, where you cut the side and then line it up with the edge. That's just too big. And then we've got here, let's see, change how you see and see how you change. And we have nature is not a place to visit, it's home. I think we're just going to go with happy birthday. These don't really fit the rest of my card. So, again, if you had stamped out some stuff, you can try it out on the front or the back. The first sheet down is the long strip. So pick what side you want to see and glue the other side. And if you're not sure where it can go, you can line your card up and just line it right up against it because it is 2 size, which is the nice thing about 8.5 by 11 inch template. And then if you're like me and you have a little extra, open up your card front, snip it off. It's just gonna be easier to line everything else up. Okay, so first things down are these bottom 2 because you see they got a divot out of them. This top paper 3 is the one that's going on last. Alright, and so again, you can always line things up. It is going to carry over a smidge over this line. My paper's thin enough, just 1 deep of the pattern paper. It doesn't really require any extra layers. And this paper for the square, it's just a little bit inside. Okay, and there is a gap between the 2. And now for this third paper hangs over like this. It's gonna need some work, okay? Because if you want it to lay flat, there's a lot going on in here. So first of all, I would figure out where it lands. And I would put a little daub of cardstock on the outside here. And I would put a little strip in here. You probably have these laying around your desk from cutting all the other stuff up. Just be careful how far you go. You don't want to overdo it and glue something on that you're going to see from underneath your card. And so then you lay the piece on without any glue, and that actually feels pretty level, so I'm going to call that good enough. It's almost impossible to get everything completely level. We're going to place this last sheet of paper, this 2x1 on top. You can put the sentiment anywhere. You could put it here. You could put it on the inside. I'm going to cut mine down again. Now I have a little line here in my pattern paper that goes across. I think that's the perfect way to break this up and put the birthday under there and make it look more inclusive of the paper. Like it's meant to be there. So that's where I'm going to put mine. But you can put yours anywhere. You can even put it down the side if you want. Up to you. But here's card 4. And again, this is just scraps. This is just leftover pieces. The first 3 cards were the cards that we were intentional with using the template. These were the leftovers with a piece of ephemera on the inside. Right. And our final card 5 is a square, and I put a lot of texture on mine. And we've got, I did bring in some extra pieces, but because of the texture, I'll probably not use them. The extra pieces being the solids. So you should have a 1 3/4 by 3 and a 1/2 by 3/4. And then you should have a 3/4 by 2 1/4 and another 1/2 by 3/4, which is on the inside of the card. All the solid color ones and the sentiment, these are just cut apart and pieces to make it stand out if you want to. So basically, we're going to line it up like this, wherever you like with your card. And I would choose whatever side of the flag is easier to stand out. And if you want to audition another color cardstock, you can. I don't really love this blue right on top of the red. Now, when you glue these together, make sure you glue down the smallest pieces first. So figure out what side of your paper 1 3/4 by 3 inch you want to use. It's going to determine how the rest of your page looks. I'm going to use the florals on mine, which means that the easiest to see side piece is the piece with the blue, because it's going to stand out. I mean, I could have used the splatter part that I'm gluing, but I wanted to have like a pattern. And you can cut a flag on that end if you want to. I just wanted a little bit of a fold over look. Make sure your paper 3 3/4 by 2 1/4 is not the same if you want to have a distinction. I mean, it could be the same, but your patterns aren't going to match, so that's where you might not like it. And if you put texture, paste, or anything on there, you can choose if you want to raise or lower it based on where you put your paste. I'm going to have mine writing side up so that it looks different than the background. And I have adjusted mine slightly lower due to where I put the paste. And then we've got this floral side. I'm going to flip over. I'm actually going to go ahead and lift this up a bit to give it a little bit of height. Not very much, maybe two sheets worth. And again, these are just scraps that you might otherwise be throwing out. So rather than recycling or tossing, you're getting some use out of it, and you're saving money on your foam tape, so it's a double win. Basically, if you can avoid throwing out the cardstock, I think that's great. You've paid for it already, so why not use it? And then we'll just put a second layer on. When it looks like this and I have little pieces and a big piece, my second layer I put a big piece over top of all the little ones, kind of to help seal them in. I mean, there's enough glue, they're not really going to go anywhere, but it just has that feeling like more secure. Alright. And now we have a flat elevated surface to glue down. And we're going to glue that right there. Okay. On the inside, you've got your panel. If you have a colored cardstock, hopefully you have a panel in here. I mean, if not, if it's white, you can of course have texture added directly to the interior. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a flag here. This piece is too small to fold in half to get a symmetrical flag, so just cross our fingers and hope. When they're smaller, they are easier to line up. Alright, so I'm going to glue this in the top left corner. And I have a sentiment cut out that I'm actually going to glue in the bottom right. Okay. Okay, so here is card number 5, scraps and a little bit of extra texture paste. And the way to do is to be, this could have also looked good, you know, with a happy birthday on the front as well, but I think this is an encouragement card. This is nice. Now, the ink should be dry on your card by now. It really should be. So let's move back to card 2. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant card 1. Alright, so now that we have all our pieces where we left off, go ahead and like just dab, and I didn't get any ink this time, so if you're still getting ink, just wait for it to dry. It's not worth risking your project. Wait for it to dry, come back to the video, or watch the video while it dries, and if you're, I'm sure you'll be able to remember, particularly with it being the last assembly point. Alright, so we'll glue that down. Using my towel just in case. So I just glued down this layer, and I've got a 3x3 that I do have a 3 1/4 inch red behind it, just to kind of draw in some of the colors. And that's going to go right here towards the middle. Then I've got this 2-inch square piece. I could use the pink side. I could also use this tan side. And the beauty of the square, you just keep rotating it until you like it. I think the pink stands out against all the papers better, so I'm going to go with the pink side on this one. And again, you could ink the edges of all these papers if you'd like. Now this one's going to need a little bit of cardstock to be straight. So just grab a strip of card, and I'm going to cut this down, and I'm going to cut it in half again. And this is the direction I want it to go. So we'll cut it and glue our extra piece down now. Honestly, that's pretty level, so I'm going to leave it like that. Awesome. This is a little bit heftier cardstock I glued down. Alright, so just kind of slide that in as far as it'll go with your extra piece. If you had any adhesive marks, dab those off. This one I am going to make a birthday card again, and I could use the red. We've got a lot of red. I've also got some blue, and I think I'm going to use the blue to pull this blue in here. Be a little different. I am going to trim this down quite a bit. I left extra on these so that I could tuck them under if I wanted, but I just prefer having less. I could have stamped directly on this paper, but I don't think it would have showed up as well because the paper is not white and very busy in pattern, so I felt like adding some white paper with the sentiment stamped would be better. Vanilla color paper would have worked too, I just didn't have any. And here's the card 1. This, you can't even tell it's the same pattern paper, it's so different. Alright, so let's do a little tour of all the cards that we've made. This is card 1, the last card we assembled. Okay, card 2 was a 5x7. Now I did add ephemera to mine, and I modified it slightly because of the print on my paper. Okay. And card 3 was the square version of card 1, as you can see, except I didn't add any extra background. Okay, card 4 was scraps. And I stenciled on mine because why not? Forgot, we stenciled on card 3 as well. And card 5 is another one with scraps that I went ahead and stenciled on the front and inside. There we go. So now you've got 5 cards all with the same paper pad and 3 different techniques. Thank you so much for joining me today in this crafting endeavor. I hope to see you again in my craft room soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and leave notifications on so you can be notified when the next video comes out.